welcome to another episode of Savadestan Ask. I'm your host Anastasia, and today we have a very special guest with us, Fatemeh Soleimanian. Welcome, Fatemeh.
Thank you, Anastasia. It's great to be here.
So, Fatemeh, let's start off by talking about your most recent trip. Where did you go and what did you do there?
Well, my most recent trip was to Japan. I spent about 2 weeks there and it was absolutely amazing. I visited Tokyo, Kyoto, and Hiroshima and got to experience a lot of the culture and history of the country. I also got to try some amazing food and see some beautiful sights.
That sounds incredible. What was your favorite part of the trip?
I think my favorite part was visiting the temples and shrines in Kyoto. There are so many beautiful ones to see, and each one is unique in its own way. I also really enjoy visiting Hiroshima and learning about the history of the city and the atomic bomb.
It sounds like you had a really immersive experience in Japan. Do you have any tips for our listeners on how to have a similarly immersive experience when traveling?
Yes, definitely. I think the key is to really try to immerse yourself in the local culture. This means trying the local food, learning a few basic phrases in the local language, and getting off the beaten path a bit. Don't just stick to the touristy areas, but try to explore lesser-known parts of the city or town. You'll often find some hidden gems that way.
That's great advice. Now let's talk a bit about the current state of travel. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on the travel industry. What do you think travel will look like in the post-pandemic world?
That's a great question. I think there will definitely be some lasting effects from the pandemic on the travel industry. For one, I think people will be more hesitant to travel internationally for a while and may stick to the domestic travel or nearby destination. I also think there will be more emphasis on safety and cleanliness in hotels and other travel accommodations. But overall, I think people will still have a desire to explore and experience new places. So I'm hopeful that the travel industry will eventually bounce back.
Oh yes, it's definitely been a challenging time for the travel industry, but hopefully things will improve soon. Now let's talk about some of your other travels. You have been to a lot of different countries and experienced a lot of different cultures. Do you have a favorite travel memory that stands out to you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I've had so many amazing travel experiences over the years, but I think one that really stands out to me is when I went to Peru and hiked the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. It was such an incredible experience to hike through the Andes and see all amazing scenery along the way. And then to finally arrive at Machu Picchu was just inspiring. It's such a magical place and really felt like I was stepping back in time.
That sounds absolutely incredible. I've always wanted to visit Machu Picchu myself. Do you have any tips for someone who is planning to hike the Inca Trail?
Yes, definitely. First of all, I will recommend booking your trip well in advance, as permits to hike the Inca Trail are limited and can sell out quickly. I would also recommend doing some training beforehand, as the hike can be quite strenuous. And make sure to pack for all types of the weather, as it can be quite unpredictable in the mountains. But most importantly, take your time and enjoy the journey. The scenery along the Inca Trail is absolutely stunning, so make sure to stop and take it away.
Those are great tips. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about the impact of travel on the environment. As we all know, travel can have a significant impact on the environment, from carbon emissions from airplanes to waste generated by tourists. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Yes, it's definitely a complex issue. On one hand, travel can be a great way to learn about and appreciate different cultures and environments. But on the other hand, it can have negative impacts on the environment and the local communities that are hosting tourists. I think it's important for travelers to be mindful of their impact and try to travel in a sustainable way. This means things like using public transportation instead of renting a car, staying in eco-friendly accommodations, and supporting local businesses that prioritize sustainability.
That's great advice. And speaking of sustainable travel, have you ever taken a sustainable travel trip before?
Yes, I have. I did a sustainable travel trip in Costa Rica a few years ago, where we stayed in eco-lodges and participated in activities like reforestation and wildlife conservation. It was a really unique and meaningful experience, and I learned a lot about the importance of sustainability in travel.
That sounds like a really impactful experience. Finally, before we wrap up, do you have any upcoming travel plans that you are excited about?
Well, yeah, I'm actually planning a trip to Morocco later this year. I've always been fascinated by the culture and the architecture of Morocco, and I cannot wait to explore the markets and try the amazing food. It should be an exciting trip.
Before we wrap up, let's answer some listener questions. We have a question from Sarah who asks, what is your favorite travel destination and why?
That's a tough question as there are so many amazing places to visit. But if I had to pick one, I would say Japan. I love the culture, the food, and the scenery. It's such a unique and fascinating country, and every time I visit, I discover something new.
Our next question is from Riza, who asks, what are some tips for traveling on a budget?
Good, that's a great question. There are a lot of ways to save money while traveling. One tip is to be flexible with your travel dates, as flights and accommodation can be much cheaper during off-peak times. Another tip is to stay in budget accommodation like hostels or guest houses, and to eat at a local restaurant instead of more expensive tourist spots. And finally, try to take advantage of free activities like walking tours or hiking instead of paying for expensive tourist attractions.
Thank you for those great tips, Fatemeh. That sounds amazing. I hope you have a great time. And with that, we will wrap up this episode of Savadestan Ask. Thank you so much, Fatemeh, for joining us and sharing your travel experiences and insights.
Thank you for having me, Anastasia. It was a pleasure.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on Savadestan Ask. Join us next time as we explore another topic. If you have any questions or suggestions for future topics, please reach out to us on our social media channels. And as always, safe travels!